I am so inspired by nature, so today I thought I would share some garden inspired home decor ideas to incorporate into your home. Hey there, it's Donna. Let's get crafting. I picked up this beautiful frame from the thrift store. I loved how intricate it was, and I thought it would be so beautiful to incorporate into our home to have a kind of like a cottage garden look. So I'm going to be taking the pieces apart. I do need the glass in here. You can see there's some foam pieces. I just need to remove those. And I'm going to give this glass a really good cleaning. It was so dirty. So all I did was use some warm soapy water and a cloth to remove all the dust and fingerprints. It's all nice and clean now. I've got this beautiful floral pattern decoupage napkin. I picked this up from a store called Ninny's Napkins. It's an online craft store and they specialize in decoupage products. So I'm going to just cut out one of these napkin panels because I just need one piece of this. And you can see it's got some beautiful agapanthus on this. I thought it was such a really pretty kind of country cottage look. So there are a total of 3 layers. I'm just using some tape to pull back the bottom layers and reveal just that top layer that's got the pattern. I find that using some tape is the easiest way. I'm now going to lay out my napkin, and I am going to be using the glass over top of our napkin. So you want to make sure while you're trying to figure out the placement that you've got the napkin facing upwards when you're putting the glass on top. So I'm going to be doing a little experimenting here. I decided to try this technique where you spray your napkin. I'm going to place the glass on top, and then I'm going to just again figure out my placement. Once you've got that in place, you just press it down and the wet napkin should stick to your glass. And then I'm just going to be very gentle and slightly pull on the napkin. You do not want to stretch it out too much. I also saw this technique where you can take some plastic wrap, crinkle it up, and to help remove any wrinkles or air bubbles. It helped a little bit. I wasn't too crazy about this technique. In the end, though, honestly, you can't even really see the wrinkles anyways once we're done, but I thought I would give this a try. It did get rid of some of the air bubbles, which is definitely a plus. So now I'm going to be using some matte decoupage glue, and I'm going to give this a coat. I did allow the napkin to dry slightly. It's still wet. But I didn't want it to be sopping wet because otherwise it's going to take forever to dry. So I'm being very careful using a soft bristle brush, and I'm applying a coat of the decoupage glue onto the back side of our wet napkin. You do want to be very careful while you're applying your decoupage glue because you don't want to accidentally rip it. I almost did. I had to just slow down. I was getting really impatient. But yeah, just wanted to warn you of that. And then I'm going to just give one coat, and then I'm going to allow this to dry well. Trying out the plastic wrap again just to see if it'll help get rid of those wrinkles that you see, but it did help again, like I said, a little bit, but it didn't get rid of them completely. I'm wondering if maybe I should have added some water to the glass and the napkin. Maybe that would have helped. I'm not sure, but you can see how beautiful it dried. I can't even see the wrinkles, so that's a bonus. I'm taking a sanding block and just running it around the edge to remove the excess. You can trim it off with a craft knife if you'd like. I'm going to be using this fun foam. It's like just crafting foam because I needed a backing, as you can see, a white backing to allow the colors to really pop. And it looks so pretty. I also needed some structure within the frame. You may not need to do this step. It really depends on how your frame is put together. If you left it clear, that would be really pretty as well. You could add some lights in behind, but I wanted the colors to pop in my napkin, so I wanted some white foam because I also needed, like I said, that structure. Putting the glass in, the backing of the napkin is facing up. I put my foam in, and then I'm putting the rest of the frame into place. This was a really easy project, and you can see how absolutely beautiful this turned out. I'm going to be using this beautiful early spring green craft paint by Decor and this tin lid that I had in my stash. I've had this lid forever and I've been wanting to use them up. I've got several, so I'm going to give 2 to 3 coats of my craft paint. You could use chalk paint if you like, but I didn't have chalk paint in this color. And you could use the baking soda technique where you add some baking soda to your craft paint, but I didn't want that texture. I just wanted a nice smooth finish, so I decided just to stick with my craft paint and give it 2 to 3 coats. I also thought that this pretty spring green color would be perfect for some garden inspired decor. So now I'm going to take my sanding block and I'm going to distress the edges. I thought that would kind of give that shabby chic cottage garden look. And then I'm going to, of course, just wipe off the dust when I'm done. You can see how pretty that distressing looks as well. I think it's just such a nice kind of romantic look and kind of gives a bit of a rustic look as well. So I wanted a bit more aging, so I'm using frayed burlap distress oxide ink. I'm using a makeup sponge to apply it. That will kind of create where, you know, when you grip something over the years, you've kind of got those wear marks and the dirt. I thought, again, it would just add to that garden cottage look. So I'm just adding little bits here and there. This is a water activated product, so you are going to need to seal it up when you're done. But first, I'm adding some rub-on transfers. I have this beautiful cottage rose. I've had it again in my stash for a while. I can't remember where I got it and I do apologize for that, but use any rub-on transfers that you like and have in your stash. I'm just cutting it out because I find that that's easiest to figure out your placement, and then you're not accidentally rubbing the other images into place, such as I have done in the past. So I'm, again, just putting it into place, and then I'm going to be using a craft stick to, of course, rub it into place. I do like to use my fingers and just press it because it's slightly tacky, but to get right into the groove, you are going to need something like a craft stick. So because this transfer is old, it wasn't completely transferring in a few spots, but that is okay. I was still able to add those little loose bits here and there, and it just kind of added to that aged look that I was going for this piece anyways. So you can see how pretty that is. So again, I'm going to just distress a little bit here. I found that the edge there just wasn't quite looking right, so I distressed it a bit. And now I'm going to give the entire piece a coat of this matte Deco Art varnish. This will help seal that ink, the rub-on transfer, and the craft paint into place so nothing chips off. I had allowed the jar lid to dry, and now I've got this jar that I've had in my stash a long time from Dollar Tree. I think it's really pretty, but I wanted to use it for storage. I wanted to keep some reindeer moss in my craft room. I usually have it tucked away in a bin in another room, and I wanted some readily available in my craft room, so I thought this would be great storage for this. So I'm going to fill it up. I got my reindeer moss from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to just close that lid on there, and you can see it's such a pretty storage piece. You can leave it as is, but I decided I wanted to add just a little bit extra, so I'm adding some baker's twine just around the top of the jar, and then I'm going to just wrap it around several times. I just felt like it looked a little bit incomplete, but of course you can just do whatever you'd like for that. And then I'm just going to tie it off with a simple bow. And then later on, you'll see that I have added a little rose as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that or not. We'll see. I just glued a single paper rose into place, but I really love having this as a storage piece within my craft room for my moss. I think it looks so pretty. I love to alter old books, and I had this one and it was looking a little grimy. I didn't pick this up to read. This is something that I'm not interested in, but I really wanted to just redo this piece. So I'm going to give the entire book cover a coat of some white gesso. Gesso is a primer, and I love to use it in my crafting. I did end up having to give, I believe it was 2 to 3 coats of my gesso because I didn't want that gray to show through my next layer. So I'm giving it an entire coat, including the inside of the book. There is some gray showing around the edge, so I wanted to cover that up as well, and you'll see why here in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a coat and then allow each layer of the gesso to dry well in between. Our book is all nice and dry. I've got this gorgeous tissue paper. It's got some beautiful florals on it. I thought it would be perfect for some cottage garden inspired projects. And I picked this up from Dollar Tree. It was a scrap that piece that I had. I picked it up again for a few years ago. I'm really trying hard to use my stash this year. And I have to say, I'm starting to see some progress. So I'm going to decoupage this onto my book, and I'm going to be working in sections. So I added a coat of my decoupage glue, and because this is a scrap piece of some tissue paper, I'm just trying to figure out my placement just to make sure that I get some good coverage so my book cover is completely covered in this tissue paper. So you'll see me playing around with that. I pressed the tissue paper into the glue, and now I'm going to just peel back the tissue paper and add some more glue onto the book cover. And then again, pressing it into the tissue paper into that glue. And I have to say, I was able to get quite a few of the wrinkles out too. There still is a few, but I'm okay with that. It just kind of adds to the interest of this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to work on this piece until I get the book cover all covered with this beautiful tissue paper. I also want to point out, I am using my paintbrush to kind of get into the groove of the spine of the book as well. So you can see I've got my book done here, except for the inside. I needed to trim off the excess tissue paper here, but I needed to leave enough so that we can wrap it inside and cover that trim that you see, the white trim, that's our gesso. I need to cover that part. So all I'm doing is just kind of cutting it down so that I can fold it properly so I can cover that and it won't look too messy or bulky. So once you've got that trimmed and you've got it cut so you can wrap it accordingly, you add a bit of decoupage glue like you see me doing here, just enough so that the tissue paper will wrap around and adhere to the inside of our book cover. And I'm going to do the same for the top and bottom cover as well as the back cover, same steps. You'll see I even created a slit by the spine so it can wrap properly there as well. So you can see here's that slit part. I needed to wrap that piece of tissue down into the spine. I trimmed off the excess. You can see there's a little bit of a pocket there. I was able to get my paintbrush in there to add a little bit of decoupage glue, and then I wrapped and pressed that tissue paper down inside. You may not need to do this step. It depends on the type of book that you are using. So now I'm giving my entire book a coat of decoupage glue again, and then I'm going to allow that to dry well. So our book is all nice and dry and it looks beautiful. You could just leave it as is and tuck it in on your shelf. I think it would look beautiful, but I wanted to use this as a fun journal. So I needed to cover the inside, and I wanted to add a few extra little paper embellishments just to help break up the pattern on the front. And I thought it would be really cool to use this as a journal, and I'll give you some examples of how I use that. I'm trying this Aleene's industrial strength glue stick for the very first time. I picked this up at my local dollar store and I wanted to see how it was, so I decided to try it out on these paper embellishments. These are just some pieces that I had in my stash. You could use anything that you'd like. You can even use some printables that you can find. Just adding the glue, pressing this into place, and then smoothing it out with a bone folder to help get out any air bubbles. And then also adding some extra glue as needed. I missed this corner and I didn't realize it, so I'm just going in and adding a little bit extra glue. And then I'm going to be doing the same thing with this paper piece here. I thought it would be a really fun touch. I really like this. It's kind of like a label and it says Flower Library on the front. So I thought I could maybe press some flowers inside this little book. So I wanted to cover the inside because you can see it's really dirty and it looks kind of plain and boring. I've got this really pretty scrapbook paper in my stash, so I'm just going to cut it down to size so it fits the inside panel of the book cover, and I do cut out 2 of these. And again, I am going to be using that Aleene's glue stick that I have to put the paper in. I just wanted to make sure everything was all lined up well, so everything was covered properly, allowing a little border around the edge of the book cover because I wanted the beautiful tissue paper to show through, and you can see how the colors match nicely as well. So you can get as creative as you'd like with this. I'm adding this label to the inside here. I thought I could maybe use this to add like a flower name and then date it and maybe the page number or something. You can see just how simple this is. To use it as a journal, you will need to remove some pages on the inside as well as glue pages together, and I'll show you that in a moment. But first, I decided I wanted to add these washi stickers. They're beautiful flowers. I thought, again, it would add to that garden-inspired look that I wanted to go for this project. So I'm just going to add just a couple of stickers here and there. And as I go through this book and add things to this, I will add some more flower stickers. But I'm just going to show you how beautiful these look in a project like this. I'm adding one to the back side as well. I've got this beautiful rose here, and I think it just looks absolutely gorgeous. So I do have some examples on how I've altered some other books, and so you can kind of see how I use them. This is one that I did several years ago, and you can see how I've covered it all up, and you can see the different things that you can do on here. I added some pockets with some tags. I painted the cover of this one, gessoed the interior of the page, and did some sketching and painting. This is my favorite one. This is my experiment one, and I do lots of different techniques in this book. I have even added some flower hammered pieces of paper here. Again, I had glued pages together, gessoed the pages, but I thought this would make an excellent flower press as well. Let me know what you would do with an altered book. Okay, so back to busting through my stash. I have this wood house here with this cactus embellishment. I've had this in my stash again for several years from Dollar Tree. I'm heating up the adhesive so I can remove that little cactus, and I'm going to set that little cactus aside because I figured, hey, this could be used for another project. And I really like cactus, so I thought this would be fun for a later project. I am going to gesso the back side of this house piece here. You could just leave it as is and decorate, but again, I'm wanting to create like a garden look. And so I've got another plan in mind for this. So I'm going to give, I think I used 2 to 3 coats again, because I really wanted to cover up that black text. I didn't want it to show through the next layer. So while that is drying, I'm going to be adding this house to this wood panel, but I wanted to add this moss ribbon to it to kind of create like a grassy look to this wood panel. And this moss ribbon was the exact size I needed. Of course, you could just use some preserved reindeer moss, but back to busting through our stash. I wanted to use this up because it was kind of crumbling apart and I didn't care for it very much anymore. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just use it for this project. You may need to add some more moss. I would just glue some using my hot glue gun. But you can see all I had to do is add some hot glue to the wood panel, press that ribbon into place, and then trim off any of the excess that we do not need. And I did end up going in a few spots and gluing some of that moss that we lost. I glued it back into place, but I didn't bother showing that. But just so you know, that's what I did. I'm adding the excess paint or gesso that's on my paintbrush onto this white picket fence that I had. And I got this from my local dollar store. I'm not sure if Dollar Tree has those or not. Let me know if you know. While that's drying, I'm going to be using this, again, napkin from Ninny's Napkins. Gorgeous napkins there. And I just opened it right up and I'm trying to decide which pattern I wanted to use. It's so pretty. And I decided I really wanted to get those birds, or at least one of those birds, into the house. So again, I'm going to be cutting out one of the panels and then removing the backing off of the napkin as well. If you don't have beautiful floral napkins like this, you could use tissue paper or you could even use fabric. I thought that would be really nice. So I'm just figuring out my placement and then I'm going to trim off the excess napkin around this house pattern. I do want this to go onto the inside a back panel that we had gessoed. And so I needed to trim off the excess. And now I'm going to be using some decoupage glue and I'm being very careful to just go up to the edge of the white panel only. I'm trying hard not to get any of this adhesive on the natural wood because I don't want to accidentally cover up that wood. So if you know a better technique on how to do this, please leave that down in the comments section to give us an idea. But this was the best option, I thought, was to cover the entire just white portion of this panel, pressing the napkin into place with my fingers, being very careful not to rip it, and then using a sharp tool to kind of get it right into the crevice and corners of that house panel. I'm going to go ahead and now add a layer of my decoupage over top. Again, being very careful when I'm going up to the edge, not to allow that adhesive to go up the edge of the wood. I do not want this napkin sticking to that wood. And it does end up sticking a little bit, but I do have a little bit of a fix. It was only in a few spots. If you're very careful with this step, then you should be okay. Once that's done, you are going to allow it to dry well. And once it's dry, you can just take a sharp craft knife and then cut along right into that crevice to remove that excess napkin that is left behind. If your knife is good and sharp, it shouldn't tear. I should have removed this blade. It did tear a little bit, but it wasn't anything noticeable. So this is where I discovered that I did accidentally get a little bit of the wood glue, or sorry, the decoupage glue on the wood. You can see me working at it here. I just use my craft knife to just kind of scrape away at it. You don't end up seeing this part anyways, because I am going to be covering up that base, but it is important to try your best not to get it on the rest of the house. So now I'm going to start to decorate. I'm using preserved reindeer moss on the bottom interior of this little house, just using some hot glue and then pressing the moss into place. You could use some faux grass here, or you could use that moss ribbon, or you could just leave it as is, whatever you'd like. I thought the reindeer moss would look really pretty and kind of create maybe like a grassy look or a shrubby look. And you can see I'm using that fencing on the front as well. I thought it would again add to that nice gardeny look that I'm going for. So now I'm going to start to add some floral. So I'm adding a touch to the inside, just where I thought it needed just a little bit more color and dimension. So I just got a real mix of some different florals here. I got these particular pink ones from a store called Dollarama here in Canada. And I just like to figure out my placement and then add the hot glue and put it into place. So I'm just going to continue to work here, just mixing up the florals and the leaves to create a look that I am happy with. Again, just testing out placement before I glue things into place. I like this particular greenery here. It's all faux greenery. It's not like anything dried or preserved, but it looks a bit like a vine, this particular one. Again, I got it from a Dollarama. I got some more greens and florals that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and these pieces I use over and over and over again from different projects. They hold up really, really well, and I always thought that they had a really pretty kind of gardeny or wildflower or meadow look. But you'll see here too, every once in a while, I test my fence to see how things are looking, and I'm like, it's still not quite looking right. I think what it was that the fence was just too tall and it was hiding too much of the pattern on the background. So I decided to trim it down, and it still didn't quite look right because I should have had like a center panel or center brace piece on the fencing, but it still did the trick. It gives the illusion of a white picket fence. The height is so much better because now I can see all those beautiful florals. But by the time we're done, you're not even going to really notice that minor detail of not having that extra bracing anyways. So you can see I glued that into place. And now I'm also going to glue this onto the panel. I accidentally deleted the footage for this. All I did was added a lot of hot glue onto the wood panel, pressed the house into place, and added some more hot glue in the crevice that remained, removing any excess, and then it was ready to go. I did make sure I pressed the house down until the glue was set. I decided I wanted to create a tree. So again, I've got this beautiful piece. I believe I picked it up from I picked it up from Michael's. I always like to get florals and greenery from Michael's when they are 50% off or more. It's the best time to get them. I like, again, to figure out the placement before I commit and then add my hot glue once I'm happy with the placement, and then pressing that and holding it into place. And you can see how it looks like a little bit of a tree. I'm going in and adding a little bit of extra glue just to help secure that, adding a little bit of moss over that glue to hide that. And then I'm going to continue just to work on this, making it look like there's some bushes and shrubs growing around this little garden cottage. I decided I wanted to add a few figurines, so I had this little bunny here on this wood stump. I put that into place, and I had this cute little hedgehog. I believe they both came from Dollar Tree a couple of years ago, so I just glued those cute little guys into place. And then I'm going to continue to add some florals and greenery pieces until I get a look that I'm happy with. I'm going to also add some more preserved reindeer moss to create a bit of a shrub look. At this point, it's just about playing with what you have, adding it until you get a look that is really pleasing to your eye. I also go in and add some faux greenery to the top, again, to make it look like there's a vine growing over top of the roof. And if you need to, trim off any excess, as I have done right there, and you can glue those back into place wherever it looks good to you. So if you have any spots where there's some glue showing, you can just go ahead and add some moss, the preserved reindeer moss, and then that will cover it up nicely. I also love to add real branches. I find that when you do that, it really helps a project come to life and doesn't make it look too fake. So again, just figure out placement and then glue things into place. These are some branches that I had foraged on a nature walk. It's something I absolutely love to do, and I really love the look that it creates. So I have this green mat here because I was getting kind of like distracted by the background of my craft table, and I felt like it was still kind of lacking. So I'm like, it needs another tree. So I trimmed down this piece, and I'm going to be gluing this to the back side. And then if you don't like the way the back side is finished, you can cover it up with some reindeer moss. I think that would actually look really cool. I'm okay just leaving it as is because I'm using this in my craft room and it's going to be going up against a wall, so you're not even going to see this. But you can see I added some glue, pressed that stem into place, added more glue, and then there I showed you the reindeer moss that you can use to cover that up if you do not like that back. But I think that adding that tree just made it look so much better. I'm using my blow dryer to get rid of any glue strings, and I love how this turned out. It's so gorgeous and definitely has that garden cottage look that I was going for. I have so many more nature-inspired DIYs for you to check out in this playlist right here. Let me know what your favorite project was for today, and I want to thank you all so much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.